It was a remarkable scene this afternoon. Urged by the president, Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta took questions from the press about his role years earlier in letting Jeffrey Epstein off with a light sentence. It was a reality TV effort to salvage his job. And let's watch.
Times have changed, and coverage of this case has certainly changed since that article. Facts are important, and facts are being overlooked. The goal here was straightforward. Put Epstein behind bars, ensured he registered as a sexual offender, provide victims with the means to seek restitution, and protect the public by putting them on notice that a sexual predator was in their midst. It was complicated by the fact that this matter started as a state investigation. A state grand jury brought that single, completely unacceptable charge. We believe that we proceeded appropriately.
Well, as you heard there, Secretary Acosta blamed the Palm Beach State Attorney's Office for the 2008 plea deal. But late tonight, the former Palm Beach State Attorney himself slammed the Secretary's defense, writing in his statement, "I can emphatically state that Mr. Acosta's recollection of the matter is completely wrong. If Mr. Acosta was truly concerned about the state's case and felt he had to rescue the matter, he would have moved forward with a 53-page indictment that his own office drafted. Instead, Mr. Acosta brokered a secret deal. Mr. Acosta should not be able to rewrite history." Well, Acosta was critical of the lenient jail term, telling reporters he absolutely deserved Epstein did a harsher punishment. He said he never approved letting Epstein out of jail to go to work every day. Well, Acosta was asked multiple times by reporters today if he felt the victims deserved an apology.
They didn't hear back from you until it was too late. Do you owe them an apology?
The agreement that had been negotiated had an unusual provision.
You have no regrets.
We believe that we proceeded appropriately.
Would you make this same agreement today?
Today's world treats victims very, very differently.
But these victims say you failed them.
We did what we did because we wanted to see Epstein go to jail.
What is the message to victims who say they don't trust you anymore?
The message is you need to come forward.
New victim. Well, Acosta's latest defense, again undertaken at the urging of President Trump, comes amid a growing chorus of people calling for his resignation. That includes the Miami Herald, writing today in an editorial, if Acosta, when he was U.S. Attorney in Miami, had shown an ounce of sympathy for the vulnerable girls Epstein sexually exploited, they would have had a powerful voice on their side. They didn't. Not only did Acosta fail to get it right in 2008, he didn't care to. He has to go. Well, sources tell NBC News tonight that President Trump spoke to Labor Secretary Alex Acosta by phone Tuesday afternoon, that was yesterday, and urged him to hold the press conference today. The New York Times reported the president monitored his performance today closely. A former administration official familiar with the matter told Politico that Acosta amounted to a Kavanaugh 2.0 rebuttal in an effort to impress President Trump. So he was talking to Trump today in that press conference. Acosta today made a point of addressing the president directly here.
My relationship with the president's outstanding. He has, I think, very publicly made clear that I've got his support. He spoke yesterday in the Oval Office. He and I have spoken. I'm here. I'm defending this case. That's my job.
Well, earlier today, the House Oversight Committee invited Secretary Acosta to testify at a hearing on July 23rd. In a letter to the Secretary, Chairman Elijah Cummings announced that the hearing would examine Secretary Acosta's actions, as well as the finding that he violated the Crime Victims Acts by keeping the agreement he made secret from the victims. For more, I'm joined by Kimberly Atkins, senior news correspondent for WBUR, Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Bernard Berger, former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. I want to go to Bernard on this one. Bernard, please, a couple things. Unpack the defense of the guy today. So the Secretary of Labor said today that it wasn't his fault because if he hadn't gotten involved as a federal prosecutor, there wouldn't have been any jail time at all, because the state wasn't going to put him away for any time. And secondly, he said, don't blame me for this crazy deal where the guy can come out every day and go to work 6 days a week when he's supposedly in jail. That was something that was cooked up after the deal and in violation of the deal. How true are those claims?
Yeah, I mean, what you see there is Acosta really trying to pass the buck to the state prosecutors. Essentially, he's saying the state had negotiated this terrible deal. We had to swoop in and try to save the day. But I think that really falls short. I mean, first of all, if he had really wanted to swoop in and save the day, it sounds like there was a 53-page indictment that his office had drafted. Why not go forward with those charges? We still have not seen a good explanation for why they decided to walk away from federal charges altogether. And if he didn't like the way that the state charges ended up playing out with him getting out of jail 6 days a week. Again, there were, at that time, in 2007 and 2008, statutes that would have guaranteed that Acosta went to jail for years, not just a matter of months. So those explanations really didn't carry a lot of weight for me.
I'll tell you, watching as a prosecutor, what did you think of the latest victim coming out today? It's an amazing, watching her talk about what he did to her. This thing is not going away at all, is it?
It's definitely not going away, and it was incredibly emotional watching her interview today. I think this is going to feed right into the case that the Southern District of New York is going to bring. I think perhaps they will add her as a victim to their case. And it just goes to show why sex trafficking charges were so important and continue to be so important for prosecutors to bring. This is a man, Jeffrey Epstein, who simply has not been held accountable for the horrific conduct that he did. And it's time for somebody to actually say, no, 13 months in jail where you get to leave 6 out of 7 days a week just isn't sufficient.
How much hard time would you have given him in a case, knowing what you know of this case and this guy's misdeeds? How much time would you put him away for?
Yeah, I mean, I did sex trafficking cases where we gave people with far fewer victims a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison. So I think this is something that years in prison is absolutely appropriate.
Kimberly, this does a couple things, because you and I talk about so many things in this program. Trump's personality, Trump's own rap sheet, the Access Hollywood, the women he paid off, all that behavior of his takes him back to the sleaze problem. He must be thinking, every day we're talking about Epstein, we're basically talking about Me Too.
Yes.
I mean, him, not just the movement, but him.
Right. And so he's done two things, right? He distanced himself from Epstein as someone who he did know and he did socialize with years ago. They haven't spoken in some time.
14 times his name, his phone numbers, different phone numbers show up in Epstein's book.
Right.
His black book.
But at the same time, he demanded that Secretary Acosta go defend himself in a way the same as he wanted to see Brett Kavanaugh defend himself against those charges. But in this case, he wanted Acosta to deny it, to defend himself, to give a reason for him to stand behind him. Because at the same time, President Trump does not like the perception that he's being pushed to do something by Democrats, by people in the media. So he wants to fight back against this. And his instinct is to back Acosta and to get Acosta to defend himself. That's what we saw today. But Acosta's biggest concern, according to folks who I talked to who are close to Republicans on the Hill and the White House, is that Republicans were not liking the job he was doing.
Yeah.
They were trying to get the president to remove him for other reason because he wasn't rolling back the regulations to the speed that they wanted. So this may actually save him. To get the president to back him and join in this fight against the Democrats might, in a weird way, make his job more safe instead of less.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.